I want to start with the pass catchers because I think that's where my research kind of started. And when going back all the way to like Cam Newton, what did those groups look like? So, Nate, I want to start with you. When you were kind of trying to find some takeaways from some of these good situations, what were the 2 or 3 kind of observations you made about the pass catching groups in these moments?
Yeah, my personal philosophy and stuff, and I've talked about this on the show, and we've had discussions on this, is I think the pass catchers can be the last thing you add to help out the quarterback. I'm just saying can here because it's not a bad thing to have good pass catchers for a guy. But yeah, you prefer to have some dudes, but it's actually not the worst thing to have a quarterback work with a small room for error, and then it gets bigger as the pass catchers get better. But I looked at some of these guys, like even guys that I've been around, and seeing how their game changes as they're able to have more room for error with the good pass catchers. Derek Carr getting Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree. That was a huge jump from his rookie year to then his second and third years when he was throwing to Seth Roberts and our guy, Andre Holmes, was like their leading target getters. That's not exactly undrafted free agents. It's not exactly who you want to throw to for a lot of targets. But then also get guys some like true aces. Dante Culpepper dropped right in a second year as a pro, but first year starting. Had Chris Carter and Randy Moss.
Not bad.
That's gonna help you throw 30-something touchdowns when you don't even have no idea what you're doing. Figure out how you play quarterback. Joe Burrow, of course, with T. Higgins, Tower Boy, Jamar Chase. Ended up getting Jamar Chase, but yeah, you guys know what I mean.
But it was in year 2. I mean, that's again, if we're talking about these in like 1-2 year increments, it was very fast.
And I know you guys I don't want to take all the examples, but I really do think that if you go from a bad pass catcher and then you get the good ones in the second or third year, it's like a baseball player having a donut on their bat. They're swinging, it's not as fast. And then you take the donut off and you're like, wow, this is a lot easier to swing this bat really fast. But another one that I even maybe underestimated because it's funny just how memory works as you get older. But like Deshaun Watson, halfway starting his first year, he has Will Fuller and DeAndre Hopkins, who are just idealistic guys to throw to, especially with his aggressive play style. But not only just having talented guys around you, but just guys that match to have synergy with you as well. And that was maybe my biggest takeaway is not only just getting talent, but getting talent that makes sense. And I've talked about this as quarterbacks, as superstars in the NBA. And you look at that and you see that that's kind of been a philosophy or how basketball team making is happening right now is getting guys that make sense and synergy around a guy. So I think that's something that's really one of my bigger takeaways as I watched maybe historical examples recently and in the way past.
Deshaun Watson with the Texans doesn't really check some of these boxes that we're going to talk about. The circumstances weren't that good his first couple of years in Houston. They were still 12th in passing DVOA. Yeah. His first full year as a starter after he got hurt. DeAndre Hopkins in 2018, their first full season together. What do you think his target share was for the Texans that season? Derek, what's your guess?
What is the record is like where I'm trying to start. I don't know, like 35%. I was
gonna say 31.
It was 33%
right
that season.
We split it.
Price is Right rules. I win.
So no one else in the league that year was above 28.8%.
Oh my God.
33%, 1/3. If you know the math there. Okay. That has happened 12 times in the past 23 years.
Okay.
One single player had 1/3 of his team's target share. Randy Moss did it twice.
Oh, yeah.
The only person to do it twice.
2002. Randy ratio, baby.
2002, 2003 are the 2 years that Randy Moss did it. Michael Thomas did it once in 2019. Antonio Brown. Steve Smith in 2005. Remember that crazy Steve Smith year where he just willed the Panthers to the playoffs?
Is that the Triple Crown year?
That's the year where he burned the Bears down in the postseason when that 2005 Bears defense was incredible.
He also scored on the Vikings that year. That was the year that's actually when Dante Culpepper got hurt. And he had an homage to the Love Boat as his touchdown celebration. So that's burning. So I remember that Steve Smith year very vividly.
So that's how much of an outlier DeAndre Hopkins was in terms of his profile within that offense. So when we're talking about how this works, give and take matters. So the Texans offensive line, which we can get into later, was horrendous that season. Like it was not good. They had no plus players on the offensive line, but they had a guy getting 1/3 of the targets who was arguably the best receiver in the league. So these things are all push and pull. It's all like a pie chart of how this can work. So Derek, on the pass catcher side of this, what was your biggest takeaway when you were looking at kind of how some of these groups were constructed for these guys that have been successes?
I mean, I think Nate nailed it with synergy. Synergy is like it's the big word, because I think having talent generally will help. Like if you just have A- skill players of any kind, I think that's going to help any quarterback. But like, I think matching guys that fit their skill sets makes sense. Like the Bengals did it perfectly. Having T. Higgins and Jamar Chase for a quarterback
and
like
Tyler
Burrow,
Boyd
and Tyler Boyd, who like Joe Burrow is so willing to, especially outside the numbers, throw up a one-on-one, and he knows his guy's going to get it, and he knows where to put it.
Yes.
And so to have those two guys is like unbelievably perfect. You look at a completely different offense. You look at what the Dolphins have done with Tua, where like Tua's not really a jump ball thrower. He's not necessarily a guy who's going to be aggressive down the field unless you absolutely make him. But he's very, very good at leading for yards after the catch, and that's what they've designed their entire offense to do with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So I think just understanding like what exactly is your quarterback good at, and giving them the tools to giving them the receivers that actually make sense for what they do, I think is perfect. I mean, even another example, like Justin Herbert, like him having just huge skyscrapers at literally every position for a guy who can just rocket it in and pinpoint the ball exactly on whatever shoulder or whatever he wants. I mean, it just makes sense, right? To have him pay those guys the way that they've done. So I think just understanding exactly what your quarterback does and trying to fit the offense to him, I think makes the most sense.
I would put these into like two different buckets outside of the synergy, which I think is a very good point. I think you have teams where there are a bevy of options and you give your quarterback selections. And like the 2017 Rams are like that, right? Like the 2017 Rams, if you look at the target distribution, it's actually pretty fascinating. No one on that team got more than 18.4% of the targets. Cooper Kupp was number one in target share at 18.4. Todd Gurley was number two at 17.1. Todd Gurley had 64 catches for 788 yards that season.
And it was screens, and it was all the play action checkdowns. And I refer to this all the time. And just rumbling down the sideline, like with nobody around him. I loved it. That's why it's burned into my brain.
Just beautiful. But that he was second. Woods was at 16.7 and Sammy Watkins was 13.7. So we're just totally distributed all over the place. And then another couple of good examples of that, like the Cowboys in 2016. Beasley was at 20%, Dez was at 20%, Witten was at 20%. So you have some of these teams where it's like, okay, we just have options, which there's value in that.
There is.
And I think that the 2019 Bills were kind of like that, that was the John Brown, Cole Beasley Bills teams before they got Stephon Diggs, where
you spam choice routes to Beasley just over and over.
And go balls to John Brown. Like that was the offense. And so that's like an intermediate step. And then the other one is you have like either one guy or two guys that this is the option I can go to whenever I want. Right. So there are a ton of examples of this. Another good example for the equal distribution, the 2012 Seahawks was Golden Tate and Sidney Rice. Just like equal options. Golden Tate, I remember as being like a slot player, and that's what he was late in his career. In Seattle that season in 2012, Russ's rookie year, Golden Tate finished 9th in air yards per attempt in the NFL.
Watch it, baby.
He was just behind Randy Moss and just ahead of AJ Green.
That's funny.
So stylistically, some players change over time. Golden Tate's one of those guys. But you look at some of these other examples, and there are a lot of these teams where they just had the one guy. You go back to, we remember the late years of Cam throwing to Kelvin Benjamin and how much of a nightmare that was. He had Steve Smith in 2011. Steve Smith had a 25% target share that year. He had 79 catches for 1,400 yards. Okay, we already talked about Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins. You go to the Chiefs, obviously. You know, they had Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. Between Kelce and Hill, they had a 50% combined target share that year for Patrick Mahomes. So I think that having either a full group that you can throw to, or at least one guy, maybe two guys who are like, these are my dudes. This happens often. This happens in almost every single one of these cases. Really, the only time it hasn't happened is when you have a team that's built a little bit differently and you can lean on the run game as a way to buy time. So Derrik, when you were talking about the Bengals, that's what it makes me think about is that era of the Bengals, the go ball era, was buying time to get Joe Burrow where he needed to get to, right? And we've seen this over time. And the one other way specifically that I think some of these teams have bought time is they've been dominant running the ball, okay? The Panthers were the number one rushing team by DVOA in the NFL during Cam's rookie year, and the quarterback has something to do with that. The Ravens were the number one rushing team in the NFL Lamar's rookie year. Quarterback had something to do with that. And the Seahawks in Russ's second season, and I believe his first season, they were number 1 in the league in rushing DVOA. So if you don't have like the guys, you better have a way to kind of protect your quarterback, insulate him, and make things easier on him. It's like one of those 2 different options.